Hey book besties, I am so excited because it is finally time to give you a mid-year flip through of my reading journal. If you are new to my channel, welcome. My name's Amanda and I create journal videos. In the past, I've only recorded my setup videos, but this year I'm trying to adopt a monthly journaling system. So in this video today, I wanted to share with you my beginning of the year throughout the end of May journal spreads, because this beautiful journal from Archer and Olive is completely full and expanding, and it is just time to start a new fresh journal. For this initial title page, I didn't get too creative. I just have my name in the front, but I got a little bit more creative on the second page. So this is the introductory page to my reading journal of 2024. And my previous reading journal I used for 3 years straight, and that's because I was not doing monthly spreads. So I had a lot more room in those journals to carry it through a couple years. So when I initially made this journal, I kind of built it with that in mind, not having done monthly spreads yet. So the first section of my journal has to do more with book challenges and annual things like that. And then we get into 2024 specific challenges, followed by the months. So to start, I just have my rating system and my title page. Up next, we have all of the books on my physical TBR, and it's a lot, but I am lucky to have so many local libraries in the area with bookstores that have books for $1, 25 cents. Pretty hard to say no to that. And what I do is after I read a book that's on my TBR, I will mark it off in a gray highlighter, mark when I read it, and what rating I gave that book. This page is to kind of help me with my book buying ban, which has not been going great, but it is going a lot better than last year. So these are all the books that I've purchased this year, whether at a discount or brand new off the shelf. And I've marked them off if I have already read those books and put the month in that I read those. I also tried to start a wish list in which I could write down some of those books that I want to read that I'd like to purchase eventually, and so far just haven't remembered to update it here. Most of that I guess I track on Goodreads. So far this year I have completed 3 of the series that were on my shelf. So we finished The Folk of the Air, The Naturals, and Daughter of the Pirate King. And over here, I've just been listing some of my favorite authors and narrators as I consume new books and audiobooks. Living in Southern California, Los Angeles area, I have access to a lot of really amazing independent bookstores. So there is a town on the outskirts of LA called Montrose, and they have 2 really incredible bookstores, Once Upon a Time and Lost Books, and they're both really unique inside. Once Upon a Time really specializes in children's books and young adult books, and they do a lot of author signings and things like that. And then Lost Books is a mix of both new releases and thrifted finds as well. So sometimes they have some lower prices on secondhand books, but it's cool because you walk in and all the shelves have a million plants on them too. So it's very good for plant lovers and book lovers. And then you've probably already heard of them, but we've got the Bookshop Besties, Cleo and Carla, and they own Spare Time Books in Paso Robles, California. And I have not been here in person yet, but I have purchased from their online shop. They're the cutest things. They have a YouTube channel as well, and they're just really trying to make it as booksellers. So supporting them makes my heart happy. And then over here is just my Bookstagram goal. I had the goal of getting to 3,000 followers on Bookstagram. So far we're only at 1,300. So we got a ways to go, but that's okay. There's no time limit to this. And as we hit each milestone, so in this case, every 100 followers, I'll mark in a new part on the journey. Now we get into my annual spread specifically for 2024. So these are the things that I want to complete within this year. These are a list of all of my kind of harder goals. One of which is checked off, and that's just using up my Audible credits. That was kind of an easy thing and something that I really prioritized because I didn't want to pay the monthly subscription fee. But a lot of these won't be completed until the end of the year just because I'm working up towards ticking those books off of my list. On this page, I've got my Goodreads challenge and my TBR knockdown. And then I have a slip out paper where I write down the books as I read them in order, so I know which book corresponds with which number on each of these pages. So the different shades of pinks and orange stand for either physical book, Kindle, audiobook, etc. And then I just color it in accordingly. And then on this side, I do the same thing, but with blues. So light blue is a book that was read off of my TBR. Dark blue is a book I tried to read off my TBR, but DNF'd. And then gray is books that I just was no longer interested in and unhauled somehow. Then we get into 24 must-reads in 2024. I loved this page in the beginning, but I'm not a great color penciler girly, so I'm liking this page less and less as we go. I think once we color in all of the books, it'll look better, but right now it just is kind of in between and not my favorite. Also, I didn't account for a lot of the books that I have on this that I have already read are white covers, so how do you color that in? I don't know, I think I tried to make it look too realistic as opposed to just coloring it in with a random color. So these are things you learn as you're journaling. The different stars are the books that I have completed off of this list. And then the silver star here is a book that I started and did not finish. On this side, we have a TBR knockout, and this is just me documenting how many books I'm reading off my TBR and how many books I'm adding to my TBR each month. So hopefully I will read a lot more books than I've purchased, but this is just a way for me to visually see the change in that happening. And over here, I have just printed out the book covers of the nonfiction books that I've read this year so far. Then we get into book bingo, which is so much fun. I've already gotten 2 bingos this year. I allow myself to fulfill 3 prompts a month so that, it takes a little bit longer than just trying to knock it all out at once. But the way I do it is I use washi tape to cover up the grid coordinates so that once I fulfill the prompt, then I can peel the washi tape off and fill in the book that I read on my bingo board over here without being able to pre-plan where that's happening. So for example, if I read a classic this month, I don't know which box on this side this corresponds to, so there's no way of me pre-planning it to try to get a bingo or manipulate a bingo. It really is by chance, which is fun. This is my series tracker. There are a number of ways you can make a series tracker, but this one works really well for me because, as you can see, I really enjoy series. So I have a lot of series to track. So instead of writing the title of every single book in the series and have like a grid to mark off that way, I just put the name of the series and then I draw boxes for how many books correlate to that series. Then each month I will fill in the box as I read them. The black boxes are the books that I read previous to 2024, and then the colorful ones are the books that I've read in 2024. The little dots inside are novellas that correspond with that series but aren't full novels. I always like the spread at the end of the year because it's so colorful, and this one I think makes me feel like I've made the most progress in my reading because I'm completing a lot of different series. Then we get into my release radar. This is where I write down each of the books that are releasing per month that I'm anticipating. And as I read them throughout the year, I mark them off in which month I read those books. So you can see I've read a lot of those new releases that were on my radar, but I haven't read everything because we need to save some for future years as well. Then we get into our page to screen, and I made this cute little cloud flip out here. The only adaptation I've watched this year is A Storied Life of A.J. Fikry, and the book and the movie were both so good. I highly recommend both of them. I was sobbing on the couch and made my husband really concerned, but I enjoyed every moment of it. So highly recommend both of those. And then on this side are just the advanced readers copies that I have read this year. I have a couple more on my shelf and NetGalley that I need to get to, but we're making some progress. Over here, I have been pasting in the covers of the new selections for Reese's Book Club. And then on this side, I'm pasting in the covers of the books that I read that are on the list overall. So one of these books was from the 2024 picks, but these two books were from a previous year in her book club. I will say, I don't know that I'll be continuing the Reese's Book Club into next year. I've read about half the books on the list total, and I've been tracking how many are 5-star reads, how many are below that, and I would say most of the books that I read are around a 3-star. But then again, I've also found some of my favorite books of all time on her list as well. So it's a gamble. I think I need to give myself grace and not try to read every book on the list and really just pick up the books that seem specifically interesting to me. And then we get into my book club spreads. I'm in 2 book clubs. So these are my selections for one of my book clubs here. And as with every best friend group, you never take pictures. So this side is intended for some group photos. We just haven't taken any yet. So that's a goal for the second semester. Same thing with my other book club. I've just pasted in the book covers for the selections of this year. Then we get into buddy reads, which I have taken pictures of. My friend Pamela and I read the Rachel Incident, which was really good. I'm reading Harry Potter for the first time with my 7-year-old nephew. And then my besties and I read the Divine Rivals Ruthless Vows duology, and we all loved it. So that was fun to read together. As you guys know, I'm a big YouTube lover, so there's a lot of booktubers that I follow that I feel like we share a lot of the same taste in books. So this was just me printing out some of the books that these creators have recommended that I also found to be a 5-star read for me. Then we get into my book awards. Now, none of this is filled in because these are awards that I will give my journal at the end of the year once I've completed my reading for the year. But this just holds a spot for the longest book, shortest book, oldest book, most hyped book, most read author, and most unique overall. And then space below to write in some notes about why I chose those books. Then similar to that, we have favorites by feeling. So depending on each of these different emotions, I'll paste in the book cover that associates with those emotions. Which book made me cry the most, which one made me laugh the most, etc. And on this page, I'm going to write in all of the places that I traveled through books. For example, I just finished The Rachel Incident, which takes place in Ireland. So that would be a list of one of the places I traveled to this year. Then we get into my favorites by genre, and this I have started to fill out. Fantasy and mystery thriller are my 2 most read genres. So inside here, I've just made a list of all of the books I've read so far in both of those genres, as well as some of the other ones. So I haven't read any in magical realism, so that's still blank, but I've read quite a few nonfiction, historical fiction, etc. So at the end of the year, this will just be something I can look at real quick and say, oh, I read a lot in this category, but this one for genre. Then we have the best of the year. Previously, I used to do the book brackets where every month you would choose your favorite and then those books would battle against each other to get to your final favorite of the year. The tough thing with that is that some months I would have like 10 5-star reads and then other months I would have like 0. So this one I think is more my style, where I can choose my favorite book based on the book cover or on the series or the best friend background character. So there's a lot of different categories for books to win. Here we have my quotes that hit page. As I find a quote that really resonates with me, I write them in these little boxes. Now we get into my monthly spreads. So a lot of this you guys have not seen here on YouTube yet because I only started sharing my monthly spreads in April. So one of the things that I thought I wanted to start tracking more and showcasing more was these little stats. I quickly grew out of that. I don't really like tracking stacks or even building these pie charts. I know you can build them in Canva, but I just don't really love the look of them. I like them in other people's journals. I just haven't figured out how to work them in mine yet. I also made this little flap to track my Instagram and YouTube info, and then I have my Bookstagram grid. So this is what my Bookstagram looked like in January. And this I think is cool because I do put a lot of effort into the pictures I take for that. So I like to commemorate that in my journal. So I've been doing this kind of as my title page every month. So then also in January, I have my TBR, which I filled in all of the books that I was hoping to read. And in January I did pretty good. I only DNF'd one book. I read everything else that I had planned to read. And The Fury I have picked up multiple times and it just isn't working for me. So I'm gonna safely say that that is a true DNF. On this side, I have all the books that I did actually read and what their star ratings are, what their page count is, and some statistics on the bottom. On my calendar, I've filled in everything, like every day that I read those books. Then we get into my reading spreads, starting with Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. Now, I don't want to do a full page spread for every single book that I read this year because I just read way too many books and that would never get done, but I really did want to commemorate and make a visual board of my favorite books. So this duology is definitely one of my favorites ever, and I love how this spread turned out. I tried to keep it indicative of the time period and capture a lot of those tiny elements of the books, like the freckles and the typewriters and things like that. And then even though I don't own this edition of Divine Rivals, I had to have the artwork in my journal because it's just so beautiful. It's so stunning. I've never wanted to buy a $300 book before, but Divine Rivals, you might have gotten me here. 7 Year Slip, such a great romance novel. I have the book cover here, and then I just kind of put in different Clementine pictures and some photos that reminded me of the story. Shades of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is a 3-part series. She's continuing the series and there's more books releasing now, but these were written a couple years ago and I finished the original trilogy. And these are the European covers, which I prefer to the American covers. And then these words are just the language that is used in the book. And none of this artwork is mine. It's all from Pinterest. And then I've got some quotes in there as well. Then we have one of my favorite books of the year so far, which is A Bond of Briars by Erin Phillips. This one is a cottagecore fantasy, which is just truly so special. So I made a vision board of that, and then I also made this little flip out for my review. As I mentioned before, I loved The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry. This book made me cry. It's so beautiful. Like, every book lover, I think, needs to read this book because it's just, it just makes you, it hits you in the feelings. That's all I'll say. Then on this side, I started my book reviews where I'm not doing a full page like decorative spread, but I still wanted to write my thoughts down for each book. So both of these are part of a series, which is why I haven't made a big spread for them yet, even though they're both 5-star reads. But I wanted to finish the series before making a spread and then just do one spread for the whole series. Here too is more book reviews. Let me get into my February spread. In these little envelopes, I have some statistics, and then I have my February Bookstagram grid. Calendar, my February hopefuls, and how many I read. I read all but one on my TBR, so that's pretty good. What I rated it, total pages, and then all of the book covers of the books that I read in February, and my book reviews. And my favorite book of January and February would be the Shepherd King series, which is One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. Oh, I just absolutely loved that. If you read fantasy, this is definitely something you have to read. They're so unique and special. Over here, I have the poem that is repeated throughout the book. And then I have a couple pictures of Elspeth and her golden eyes and the nightmare, of course. Jumping into March, I love how the color scheme turned out on this. I know it's very muted and grays and browns, but it just feels so cozy. March was a really overcast month for us, and the colors pull it in and remind me of March in that way. I did not do a TBR in the beginning of March because I did my first readathon, and that kind of launched a new obsession for me within my reading journal. So that readathon is called Realmathon, and this one is hosted by Covers with Cassidy, and I chose to be on Team Time. So my spread here is just a bunch of pictures of clocks, and then I wrote in some of our characteristics for our team. So this was my very first readathon, so I didn't quite know how to set up the spread, but I just used the map provided by the readathon as my background. I put my team crest in here, the rules and the point system, and then I kept track of my different reads and the points inside my journal. And then these are the books that I read to fulfill my different prompts. So the team time that I was on, we needed to read white covers to get bonus points. So I put all of my white books on the front here, and then inside we've got the other books that I read that weren't white covers. And I've got my special bookmark for Realmathon that I just tuck inside here. Those little keepsakes are what make it so special for me. Then we get into my favorite books of March, which was the Cruel Prince saga. I devoured every single book in the series except for Prisoner's Throne. That's the last one that I need to read, and it is still on my shelf. But I was just in love with this whole world. I found these collages on Pinterest, so I did not create those. I just kind of layered them together. I also got my own physical copies of the books too after reading them through the library, and my Pango order came in packaged so wonderfully that I had to put some of the packaging in my journal because it was so cute. So this is more of that packaging from my Pango order, and then just my different thoughts on each of the books in the series. And then these were the other books that I read in March, but didn't necessarily need to make a whole spread for. And because I always like to start a month on a full page spread, I had an extra page for the month. So I kind of just drew out the chapter art that's in the Cruel Prince books. And then I wrote in one of the quotes that I liked. And the quote says, "Most of all, I hate you because I think of you often. It's disgusting and I can't stop." out of context. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but trust me, it's so charming and it reminds me of that scene in 10 Things I Hate About You. And then we get into April. April, I went to France. There's some France pictures mixed in with some different bookish pictures. Everything I read in April. Jumping into my second readathon, which is the Magical Readathon. So part of the Magical Readathon is a year in Aeldia, or adventure in Aeldia. And this is a year-long prompt-based readathon. So every month you choose one of the prompts and you follow your character down the line. So I built a character here, I've got the maps of the readathon, and as I go through my different prompts, I save the books that I read inside this flap. There's also 2 month-long readathons in April and in August, and that's where you track your different points and you can get special certifications in different qualifications for your character. So my character is now an apothecary keeper, and these were the books that I read to fulfill that certification. I'm also a bog cataloger, and this is the book and documentary I watched to fulfill that. So I'm still working on my sandship engineer certification and my dragon riding license. So hopefully I will finish these before my fall semester. And then this spread is dedicated to my spring semester at the Orilium Academy. So I've got my student report card with all of the classes required, which ones I completed, and which books I read for each prompt within my classes. And then I get into my book reviews. The Nightingale was such a good book. Kristen Hanna is just one of my favorite authors. Powerless really surprised me. I had heard so many mixed reviews on this book. Some people love it so much, and a lot of people said it was way too similar to The Hunger Games. But I personally think it's wonderful, and I am very excited to continue the series. Again, this was a collage that I found on Pinterest, and then the book cover, of course. Then we get into May. In May, I took part in Escape the Readathon, which is hosted by Books with Lexi. May is a really busy birthday month for me, so I didn't do a lot of bookstagramming, so I kind of mixed in some stats with some of the pictures that I posted on Bookstagram, but it was a pretty silent month for me over there. Here I've got my TBR, which I read every book on my TBR, and a lot more. I actually read 16 books in the month of May, so this readathon really pushed my reading habits because I generally float around 10 books a month. And then just marking off when I read each of those books. And then we're getting into the readathon spread itself. So this readathon was a carnival theme this month, and the way it works is you're on a team on Discord, and together with your team, you're trying to break out of these different buildings on the map. Once you've broken out of most of these buildings, then you can actually break your team out of the whole circus. Over here, I made some tickets in Canva, and this just had our different reading prompts. So for example, food court is a popcorn read. This is to read a book that you really can't put down. You just want to consume it all in one sitting. So the book that I read for that is the novella 12. And then that opened up a game. So I forget what Fear Factor was, but we had to read certain prompts. And as we read those prompts, it equated to us eating snails and slugs. So these were the books that I read to fulfill those prompts. So I have all of those different books on the back of my tickets, as well as my Team Jesters official bookmark, which is that nice, soft cartoon cover feel. And I just slipped those in the pocket. But I love how this spread turned out. I know it's chaotic. I know it'll only make sense to those of you who participated in this readathon, but I absolutely love it. Everything is so me. Then I get into my book reviews. Again, even though I loved Powerful and that was a 5-star read for me, I'm gonna wait until the series is done before doing a whole spread for it. The Twilight Garden was one of my favorite books. Sarah Nisha Adams is just like the queen of writing nostalgic stories and heartfelt stories, so please check her out. I feel like there's not enough people talking about her. I think she writes fantastic books. Then we get into the Daughter of the Pirate King series, which I've been hearing so much about ever since I kind of jumped back into reading, and I just never picked them up. And this month I just downed the whole series in one go. So the quote I chose here is, "I live on the cusp of two worlds, trying desperately to fit into one." And I chose this picture because it looked similar to the book covers. And then on this flap I have the human version versus the mermaid version. So I liked that transition. And then I wrote my thoughts inside. More book reviews. Had very high hopes for these 3 books and was a little disappointed in those, but I thought I was pretty confident that this was going to be a 5-star series for me, and as of reading the first book, I think it will be. I'm very excited to continue the Cassandra Clare world. Then we get into Funny Story. Emily Henry is one of my favorite authors of all time, and every year for book club, we read the newest Emily Henry book. So that was May this year. I just put in some different Polaroids of some things that reminded me of the story, as well as written my thoughts and some quotes. Couple more book reviews, and this cute little cat illustration by Sibylle Maynett. I just thought it fit really well with the Black Cat Carnival theme. And then we get into another readathon that I participated in May, and that is the Vampire Diaries Readathon. This is just my score at the end of the month. These were the different prompts for each of the characters and which book I read to fulfill each prompt. And then the very last day of the month, I needed to read one more book to finish off this list. So I read Heartless by Marissa Meyer. And this one really surprised me. I would give it a 5-star. It is a kind of a young adult novel, and it's a retelling about the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland. But it was very, very enjoyable. So if you are a reader, but you're also a parent of some younger teenagers, some tweenagers, this would be a really good audiobook for you guys to listen to in the car. And that is it, you guys. I have a couple extra pages left in my journal, but I'm afraid to completely cut them out, or else some of these pages that they're connected to will also fall out of the journal. So let me know what you think I should fill the last couple pages up with. I was thinking either more quotes, or I could do like words that I learned through these different books. I'm not sure. If you guys have any ideas, let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the June wrap up where I transitioned to this new journal. Isn't she beautiful? Thank you so much for letting me share my creative reading journey with you all, and I hope to see you soon in another video. Bye.